On September 29, 1982, in Elk Grove Village, Illinois, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke with a cold. Her parents gave her a Tylenol extra-strength capsule. Within hours, Mary collapsed and died. Her death was initially attributed to natural causes, a tragic but seemingly isolated event. However, this seemingly ordinary medication would soon reveal itself as a vector for an extraordinary terror. What began as a local tragedy would rapidly escalate into a nationwide crisis, exposing a vulnerability in consumer trust and product safety that America was unprepared for. The innocent act of taking a common pain reliever was about to become a lethal gamble. Later that day, in Arlington Heights, 27-year-old Adam Janis collapsed and died under similar, mysterious circumstances after taking Tylenol. His family, gathered to mourn, also reached for Tylenol capsules. The following day, Adam's brother, Stanley Janis, aged 25, and Stanley's wife, Teresa Janis, aged 19, both succumbed after consuming capsules from the same bottle. These linked deaths triggered immediate alarm. Medical examiners, initially baffled, now recognized a disturbing pattern, seemingly healthy individuals dying suddenly after using the same over-the-counter medication. Forensic pathologists, led by Dr. Edmund R. Donahue, quickly identified the cause of death: cyanide poisoning. Subsequent tests on the Tylenol bottles confirmed the presence of potassium cyanide in capsules found in the victims' homes. This was not an isolated manufacturing error, it was deliberate contamination. The public health crisis was now undeniable. Authorities had to act with unprecedented speed to identify the source and warn a terrified public that a trusted household staple had been turned into a weapon. The discovery shifted the investigation from accidental deaths to a criminal act of mass poisoning. The terrifying realization that Tylenol was compromised led to frantic efforts to locate other potential victims. Before a nationwide warning could be widely disseminated, 2 more lives were lost. On October 1, Mary McFarland, a 31-year-old flight attendant from Elmhurst, died after taking Tylenol. Hours later, Paula Prince, 35, a flight attendant visiting Chicago from Las Vegas, purchased Tylenol at a Walgreens. She was later found dead in her apartment, her Tylenol bottle also laced with cyanide. These subsequent deaths underscored the urgency of the unfolding catastrophe, deepening the sense of widespread vulnerability. The grim tally reached 7 victims. The first was Mary Kellerman in Elk Grove Village. Then Adam Janis, followed by his brother Stanley and sister-in-law Teresa in Arlington Heights. Mary McFarland in Elmhurst, and Paula Prince in Chicago. These geographical locations, all within the greater Chicago metropolitan area, pointed to a localized but deadly threat. This cluster of deaths, each linked to cyanide-laced Tylenol, ignited a public health emergency unlike anything the United States had ever witnessed. The sheer randomness and insidious nature of the attacks sent shockwaves of fear across the nation. Upon confirming the link between the deaths and Tylenol, authorities moved swiftly. On October 1, 1982, the Illinois Department of Public Health issued a public warning against the use of extra-strength Tylenol capsules. This was amplified by news media across the region, urging consumers to cease using the product immediately. Pharmacists and grocery stores began pulling Tylenol from shelves even before official directives reached them. The initial response was chaotic but decisive, driven by the urgency of preventing further fatalities. However, without a clear understanding of the perpetrator, fear continued to spread. Johnson & Johnson, the manufacturer of Tylenol, faced an unprecedented crisis. On October 5, the company, under CEO James Burke, made a bold and costly decision: a nationwide recall of 31 million bottles of Tylenol capsules. This voluntary recall, estimated at over $100 million in 1982 dollars, was virtually unheard of for a non-defective product. Burke's leadership emphasized consumer safety above all else, issuing warnings via television, radio, and print. This swift and decisive action would later be hailed as a masterclass in crisis management, setting a new standard for corporate responsibility. The Tylenol recall was monumental. It involved retrieving products from hundreds of thousands of retailers and individual homes across the entire country. The logistical challenge was immense, requiring coordination with distributors, law enforcement, and media. Reports indicated that over 100,000 phone calls flooded Johnson & Johnson's hotline in the days following the announcement, reflecting widespread public concern. This recall wasn't merely about removing a product, it was about attempting to restore a fractured sense of safety, and exercising damage control on an epic scale, illustrating the profound impact of consumer fear. As the recall unfolded, the criminal investigation intensified. The FBI, ATF, and various local law enforcement agencies formed a joint task force. Their primary objective: identify the perpetrator and understand the mechanism of tampering. Evidence suggested the capsules were opened, cyanide inserted, and then resealed, likely at the retail level. This indicated a sophisticated, deliberate act, not random sabotage at the factory. The focus shifted from manufacturing plants to distribution channels and retail locations, meticulously tracing the contaminated bottles back to their points of origin. The Tylenol murders dominated national news. Television, radio, and newspapers provided continuous updates, often live from the scenes of the investigation. The media's pervasive coverage played a crucial role in disseminating warnings and amplifying public fear. While essential for public safety, this intense scrutiny also created a climate of widespread paranoia. Every Tylenol bottle became a potential threat, every sudden illness a possible poisoning. The story transcended crime, it became a cultural event, embedding the fear of product tampering into the national consciousness, a collective trauma experienced via broadcast media. Investigators faced immense forensic challenges. While the cause of death was clear, tracing the cyanide back to a specific individual proved elusive. Thousands of contaminated capsules needed to be examined, but each offered limited unique identifiers. The process involved meticulous chemical analysis to determine the type of cyanide and packaging analysis to understand how the tampering occurred. Despite extensive efforts, no fingerprints or definitive DNA evidence linked a suspect directly to the tampering. The sheer scale and anonymity of the attacks made traditional criminal profiling difficult, leaving investigators with few tangible leads. One name emerged early in the investigation: James William Lewis. A cryptic letter was sent to Johnson & Johnson, demanding $1 million to stop the killings. Handwriting analysis linked the letter to Lewis. Although he was eventually convicted of extortion for sending the letter, he consistently denied any involvement in the murders. Investigators spent years trying to tie him directly to the cyanide tampering, but without concrete evidence, murder charges were never filed. Lewis's connection added a layer of complexity, suggesting a motive of financial gain, yet leaving the direct act of murder unpunished and officially unsolved. Despite an exhaustive multi-agency investigation spanning decades, the Tylenol murders remain officially unsolved. The task force followed thousands of leads, interviewed countless individuals, and pursued various theories, from disgruntled employees to copycat terrorists. Yet, no one was ever charged with the murders themselves. The complexity of the case, combined with the lack of direct physical evidence connecting any individual to the actual tampering, meant that justice for the victims' families remained elusive. The case stands as a chilling reminder of how a well-executed, targeted act of terror can evade accountability. The Tylenol murders unfortunately spawned a wave of copycat incidents nationwide. Within weeks, reports of tampering surfaced for other products, including painkillers, eye drops, and food items. These imitations, though often hoaxes, amplified public fear and placed immense strain on law enforcement and manufacturers. The FBI confirmed over 270 copycat incidents in the months following the Tylenol attacks. This phenomenon demonstrated the psychological impact of the original crime, turning everyday consumer products into objects of suspicion and forcing a re-evaluation of security measures across diverse industries. Before the Tylenol murders, consumers rarely questioned the safety of over-the-counter products once they left the factory. The packaging was simple, and trust was implicit. The crisis shattered this assumption. A 1982 Gallup poll revealed a significant drop in consumer confidence regarding packaged goods. The psychological fallout was profound. transforming the relationship between consumers and the products they bought. It highlighted how fragile public trust can be and how quickly it can erode in the face of malicious intent, leaving a lasting scar on the American psyche regarding product integrity. Prior to 1982, pharmaceutical packaging standards were vastly different. Many medications, including Tylenol capsules, were sold in bottles with simple screw caps, often protected only by cotton wadding. There were no seals, no films, no indicators that the product had been opened or altered before purchase. This design made it tragically easy for a perpetrator to open, tamper, and reseal capsules without leaving obvious signs. The reliance on sheer consumer trust, rather than physical barriers, proved to be a critical vulnerability that the Tylenol crisis exposed with devastating clarity. The Tylenol murders galvanized immediate legislative action. In 1983, Congress passed the Federal Anti-Tampering Act. This landmark legislation made it a federal crime to tamper with consumer products, or to threaten to do so. Crucially, it also mandated tamper-evident packaging for over-the-counter drugs, cosmetics, and certain food products. This meant that packaging had to visibly indicate if it had been opened or altered. The act was a direct, systemic response to the crisis, aiming to restore confidence and prevent future attacks by erecting physical barriers against malicious interference. The Federal Anti-Tampering Act catalyzed an industry-wide revolution in packaging design. Manufacturers rapidly adopted a multi-layered approach to security. This included foil seals over bottle openings, shrink-wrapped outer packaging, and child-resistant caps that were also difficult to manipulate. The familiar tamper-evident features we see today on virtually all over-the-counter medications are a direct legacy of the Tylenol crisis. This transformation wasn't just about preventing tampering, it was about visibly assuring consumers that their products were safe, a critical step in rebuilding fractured trust. Despite the devastating impact, Tylenol made a remarkable comeback, largely due to Johnson & Johnson's decisive and transparent response. The company not only pulled all capsules but also reintroduced Tylenol in a triple-sealed, tamper-evident caplet form. This proactive measure, combined with a massive advertising campaign emphasizing their commitment to safety, gradually rebuilt consumer confidence. Within a year, Tylenol's market share, which had plummeted from 35% to 8%, recovered significantly, a testament to effective crisis management and a genuine focus on consumer well-being. The Tylenol crisis didn't just affect one brand, it reshaped the entire pharmaceutical industry. Companies across the board had to re-evaluate their production lines, packaging processes, and quality control measures. New capital investments were poured into tamper-evident technologies, leading to more robust and secure supply chains. This shift wasn't merely a regulatory compliance, it was a fundamental change in corporate philosophy, recognizing that product integrity was paramount to business survival. The event served as a stark lesson in the vulnerabilities of an interconnected market. Beyond the human tragedy, the financial costs of the Tylenol crisis were immense. Johnson & Johnson's recall alone cost over $100 million in 1982, equivalent to nearly $300 million today when adjusted for inflation. This figure doesn't include the broader economic impact on the pharmaceutical sector, the cost of increased security measures across all industries, or the long-term legal and investigative expenses. The crisis also spurred significant investment in product liability insurance, reflecting the heightened risk manufacturers now faced. It was an economic shockwave with lasting repercussions. The Tylenol crisis fundamentally changed consumer behavior. Shoppers became far more vigilant, scrutinizing packaging for any signs of tampering before purchase. This heightened awareness empowered consumers to demand greater transparency and security from manufacturers. The previously implicit trust was replaced by an explicit expectation of tamper-evident features. This shift in consumer psychology forced companies to not only implement safety measures but also to actively communicate these measures to their customers, fostering a new era of proactive consumer protection and product transparency. Decades later, the Tylenol murders remain one of America's most enduring cold cases. Despite renewed investigative efforts in the 2000s, including DNA testing of remaining pills, no definitive breakthrough has occurred. The identity of the perpetrator, the motive beyond the extortion letter, and the exact method of cyanide delivery continue to be debated. The lack of closure for the victims' families is a stark reminder of the limitations of forensic science and criminal investigation, even in cases of immense national significance, leaving a haunting question mark in American true crime history. The Tylenol murders left an indelible mark on the American psyche, creating a legacy of fear concerning product safety. While subsequent tampering incidents have occurred, none have reached the same level of impact or public terror. The initial shock and vulnerability instilled by the Tylenol crisis permanently altered how society views everyday consumer goods. This fear, though subsided, remains a subconscious vigilance, a reminder that the seemingly mundane can harbor unseen dangers. It's a testament to the crime's profound psychological resonance. Comparing the pharmaceutical industry pre- and post-1982 reveals a stark transformation. Before the Tylenol murders, the industry operated on an assumption of inherent product safety, with minimal physical barriers. After 1982, the paradigm shifted to proactive protection, with multi-layered tamper-evident systems becoming the norm. The emphasis moved from reactive damage control to preventive engineering, fundamentally altering packaging, manufacturing protocols, and regulatory oversight. This was a forced evolution, driven by tragedy, demonstrating that crises can be powerful catalysts for systemic change across entire sectors. The Tylenol murders significantly expanded the role of the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Previously, the FDA's focus was primarily on drug efficacy and safety during manufacturing. The crisis compelled the agency to enforce new standards for packaging security and product integrity at every stage of the supply chain. The FDA quickly issued regulations for tamper-resistant packaging, working closely with industry to ensure compliance. This marked a shift, broadening the FDA's purview from internal product integrity to external protection against malicious third-party interference, a crucial expansion of public health oversight. The impact of the Tylenol murders wasn't confined to the pharmaceutical sector. Other industries, particularly food and beverage, also began adopting tamper-evident seals and practices to reassure consumers. From juice cartons with foil pull tabs to sealed condiment bottles, the ripple effect was widespread. While not always legally mandated for non-drug products, the market's demand for safety, driven by the Tylenol crisis, encouraged a universal adoption of better packaging security. This illustrates how a specific tragedy can initiate broad, voluntary changes across diverse manufacturing landscapes, driven by perceived consumer need. The Tylenol murders also marked a turning point for law enforcement's approach to product tampering. It established a precedent for multi-agency collaboration on a national scale, drawing resources from local police, state agencies, and federal bodies like the FBI and FDA. The case highlighted the need for specialized forensic techniques to handle product-related crimes and the importance of public communication during such crises. It became a case study in how to respond to a new type of domestic terrorism, where everyday items became weapons, forcing investigators to adapt to an evolving threat landscape. While the focus often shifts to the investigation and industry changes, it's crucial to remember the 7 individuals whose lives were tragically cut short. Mary Kellerman, Adam Janus, Stanley Janus, Teresa Janus, Mary McFarland, and Paula Prince. Each was a person with a life, a family, and a future. Their stories serve as a powerful reminder of the human cost of this crime. The changes in consumer safety laws are a direct legacy of their deaths, ensuring that no one else would suffer such an insidious fate from a trusted product. Their tragedy sparked a transformation. The Tylenol murders present a profound paradox, a crime that remains unsolved but whose impact led to arguably the most significant advancements in consumer product safety in American history. The perpetrator achieved anonymity, yet their actions irrevocably changed the landscape of everyday commerce. This highlights a unique aspect of certain crimes. Even without justice for the victims, the wider societal response can still lead to monumental positive change. It is a stark example of how devastating events can become catalysts for unforeseen legislative and industrial progress. The Tylenol murders fundamentally recalibrated the price of consumer trust. Before 1982, trust was a given. Afterwards, it became something explicitly earned and protected. Manufacturers now bear the visible burden of proof, showcasing tamper-evident features as a necessary component of product integrity. This shift, while costly, ultimately fortified the bond between companies and their customers. The case solidified the understanding that safeguarding consumers is not merely ethical but an existential imperative for any brand seeking long-term viability in a market acutely aware of potential threats. In summary, the 1982 Tylenol murders, beginning with the tragic death of Mary Kellerman and claiming 7 lives, sparked an unprecedented crisis. The ensuing investigation, nationwide recall, and intense media coverage revealed a vulnerability in consumer products. This led directly to the Federal Anti-Tampering Act of 1983, mandating tamper-evident packaging and reshaping manufacturing practices across industries. While the murders remain unsolved, their legacy is a fundamentally transformed landscape of consumer safety, making the products we buy today significantly more secure than those of the past. It was a dark chapter that forged a safer future. The Tylenol murders set a powerful precedent for how corporations and governments respond to crises involving public safety. Johnson & Johnson's decision to prioritize consumer well-being over immediate financial concerns became a benchmark for corporate responsibility. The rapid legislative response demonstrated the government's capacity to act decisively in the face of widespread threat. This case illustrates that even the most heinous acts can, inadvertently, lead to monumental improvements when institutions commit to learning from tragedy and implementing lasting protective measures for their citizens. As we conclude our deep dive into the Tylenol murders, it's imperative to reflect on the victims who were at the heart of this tragedy. Mary Kellerman, Adam and Stanley Janus, Teresa Janus, Mary McFarland, and Paula Prince. Their names are etched into this chapter of American history not just as victims, but as catalysts for a safer world. Every time we peel a tamper-evident seal, we are, in a subtle way, acknowledging their sacrifice and the profound societal changes born from their unimaginable suffering. The poison that threatened to shatter America instead united it in a demand for safety.